The average worker spends 40 to 50 years trading their physical energy for a paycheck, only to find that the rising cost of rent, food, and basic survival consumes every single dollar before the month is even over. You wake up before the sun, feeling the heavy ache in your bones from yesterday's labor, knowing you have to step right back into the ring. This daily routine is a brutal heavyweight fight, and for most people, it feels like they are losing on points. The bills land like relentless body blows, draining your stamina, leaving you exhausted and cornered against the ropes of your own life. There is a deep, quiet fear that settles in during the dark hours of the morning. It is the terrifying realization that you might never build enough of a shield to protect your family, and that you will be forced to take these punches until your very last breath. You are fighting a war of attrition against inflation and endless expenses, and your only weapon is your own limited time and energy. But then comes a moment that changes the math of this survival game, starting with the arrival of your very first dividend. Imagine you take a fraction of your hard-earned paycheck and buy a single share in a solid, profitable company. A few months later, that company sends you a piece of its profits just for holding that share, dropping a few cents into your account. It is just a few pennies, a payout so small that the rest of the world would laugh at it. It looks incredibly weak against the massive weight of your monthly rent or your grocery bill. Most people look at those 75 cents and dismiss them entirely, thinking it will never be enough to change their reality. Yet this tiny deposit forces a critical choice. You can take those pennies and spend them, letting the money vanish back into the endless cycle of consumption, or you can make a completely different decision. By refusing to spend that tiny payout, you stop trading your time for money and force that money to step into the ring and fight for you. This is the birth of the Dividend Reinvestment Plan, often called a DRIP. And it is not just some boring bank form you fill out online. It is a brave, quiet vow made in the face of financial exhaustion. When you turn on automatic reinvestment, you are looking directly at the companies paying you and telling them to keep the cash and give you more armor instead. You are choosing the hard, unglamorous path of delayed gratification. You accept that you will not get to buy a coffee or a new pair of shoes with your investment income today. Instead, you are building a machine that operates entirely in the background of your life, taking every single cent of profit and immediately using it to buy more of the asset that generated it. It is a silent declaration of independence, a promise to your future self that you will slowly forge an unbreakable shield. The true power of this strategy is how deep compounding begins entirely in the dark, away from any cheering crowds. Step by step, those first reinvested pennies go right back into the market to buy a tiny sliver of another share. You do not even need enough money to buy a whole share anymore, because the system purchases a fraction of one, locking it firmly into your portfolio. Then, 3 months later, the company pays out its next round of profits. But this time, the math has shifted in your favor. You get paid for your original share, and you also get paid for that tiny new sliver you bought with the last dividend. That new sliver earns its own pennies, creating a slightly larger payout, which then buys an even bigger fraction of a share the next time around. This silent gear turns relentlessly, building your wealth piece by piece while you are sleeping, working, or simply trying to survive the day. You know this feeling all too well. We all step into the ring looking for that one spectacular knockout punch, the fast win that changes everything overnight. Instead, you find yourself grinding through the daily reality of your own life, putting away small amounts of money while the world around you seems to move much faster. It is a heavy, quiet burden to carry when you are playing the long game. It can be absolutely heartbreaking to watch others celebrate their flashy, sudden victories. They show off new cars, expensive vacations, and overnight successes, while you are quietly building your wealth in the shadows. You are setting up your dividend reinvestment plans, letting those tiny drips of cash buy tiny slivers of shares, and waiting in the dark while everyone else seems to be standing in the spotlight. This brings us to the grueling middle rounds of this years-long fight. The opening bell is a distant memory, the final victory is nowhere in sight, and the sheer exhaustion of the daily grind sets in. You go to work, you earn your paycheck, you let the dividends reinvest, and yet, when you check your account, the pile of money still looks frustratingly small. The math is happening, but the human toll is immense. After 3 or 4 years of taking punches and staying disciplined, a dark, heavy doubt begins to creep into your mind. You wonder if this slow, relentless strategy is actually moving you forward, or if you are simply taking a beating for nothing. That suffocating doubt in the middle rounds is exactly why relying on your own motivation will eventually get you knocked out. This is where the mechanics of an automatic dividend reinvestment plan become your greatest shield. By setting the system to run entirely by itself, you remove your own tired willpower from the equation. When the company pays you that quarterly cash, the system does not ask if you are feeling confident or if you are feeling defeated. It simply takes that cash and buys more shares, month after month, year after year, without a single moment of hesitation. This automation strips the human weakness out of the fight, ensuring that your wealth continues to build even on the days when you want to throw in the towel. There is a strange, almost tragic flaw in the way our human minds process time. We are completely blind to the terrifying power of exponential growth. It is incredibly hard for us to look at a small snowball rolling down a very long hill and truly believe that it will eventually become a violent, unstoppable avalanche. Because the early changes are so incredibly small, the math of this deep compounding remains entirely invisible to the naked eye. It hides in the shadows of those brutal middle rounds, quietly building mass and momentum while you are distracted by the pain of the current moment. But just because that invisible exponential math is hiding in the dark does not mean its power is resting. Suddenly, the market delivers a devastating hook to the jaw. The economy fractures, headlines scream of financial ruin, and the screens blink a relentless, terrifying red. It is the moment every investor dreads, a brutal shock that tests the very limits of human endurance. You log into your account and the numbers strike you right in the chest. Half of the life savings you bled for, the wealth you spent years building, seems completely wiped out in a matter of weeks. The air leaves the room, replaced by a raw, suffocating panic that urges you to throw in the towel and sell everything before it all burns down. But while panic tells you the fight is over, the mechanics of your plan are quietly preparing a devastating counterattack. The system ignores the chaos of the crashing market, focusing entirely on the raw cash generated by the companies you still own. This is where the hidden genius of the dividend reinvestment plan reveals itself in the darkest rounds of the fight. The automatic system does not feel fear, and it does not care that the market has collapsed. It takes the exact same dividend cash you were paid last quarter and marches straight back into the ring. Because stock prices have plummeted, those regular dividend payouts suddenly possess incredible buying power. Your cash is now scooping up shares at a massive discount, gathering far more pieces of the company than it ever could during the good times. This relentless, emotionless strategy is known as dollar cost averaging, and it turns a brutal market beating into the greatest opportunity of your life. A profound psychological shift begins to take root deep within your soul. You stop staring in horror at the crumbling account balances and realize the bad times are actually accelerating your wealth. The very punches meant to destroy your financial future are now giving you the leverage to build your mountain of shares faster than ever before. Fear is entirely replaced by a quiet, unbreakable power. When the market drops, you no longer panic because you know your dividends are working overtime, buying up cheap shares that will eventually skyrocket in value. You have transformed the most terrifying aspect of investing into your ultimate advantage, using the weight of the opponent against them. Decades pass, and the relentless rhythm of the middle rounds leaves its mark. Your hair turns gray, the lines on your face deepen, and the physical toll of a long life shows on your rough hands. Yet, inside your chest, your heart beats with a profound, unshakable calm. You have weathered the catastrophic crashes and the euphoric booms, standing firm through every season of panic and greed. There is a deep, quiet dignity in knowing you survived not by landing one lucky punch, but through the sheer, unrelenting discipline of showing up every single day. The struggle has forged an iron patience that no sudden crisis can ever break. That iron patience ultimately transforms the slow grind of the middle years into an unstoppable force. As the final rounds approach, the sheer volume of shares you have quietly accumulated is about to unleash a level of wealth you once thought impossible. The true measure of this grueling fight is not found in the daily ticker tape, but in a concept known as total return. This is the final scorecard of your financial journey. Total return does not just track how high the share price climbed over 30 years of market battles. It captures the massive, undeniable weight of every single extra share you bought through decades of relentless dividend reinvestment. By the late rounds of this fight, the original money you put into the ring is just a fraction of your wealth. The snowball has taken over. Most of your total return now comes from the dividends earned on the dividends you reinvested 20 years ago. It is a towering pile of shares that built itself while you slept, worked, and lived. That final scorecard of total return reveals a staggering truth when you look at the historical record of the Standard & Poor's 500 index over the last half-century. The sheer price of those companies only tells about half the story of their growth. The rest of that towering wealth came entirely from those quiet, automatically reinvested dividends relentlessly compounding in the background while the world focused on the flashy headlines. This legendary power is not locked behind the gates of Wall Street, and it does not ask who your parents were. This compounding wealth builder is available to anyone willing to step into the ring. You do not need to be born rich, and you do not need a fancy financial degree to set up an automatic reinvestment plan. The only entry fee for this strategy is your own patience and your courage to stay the course when the market gets ugly. It asks you to make a simple, profound choice today, and then find the quiet discipline to leave it alone for decades. This profound tool levels the playing field, turning ordinary workers into quiet giants of wealth simply by letting time do the heavy lifting. Then come the late rounds, bringing the ultimate emotional payoff for a lifetime of discipline. The fighter is older now, their hands worn from years of labor, but when they look at their account, they see a mountain built from pennies. The dividend reinvestment plans have amassed so many shares that the cash payouts alone now cover the cost of their food, their home, and their daily life. They have finally bought their own freedom, piece by piece, without ever having to sell the core of what they built. This victory echoes far beyond a single retirement, reshaping the financial destiny of entire families. The durable consequence of this strategy is the creation of generational wealth, a concrete reality where children inherit not just money, but an unbroken engine of income. When a family trust or an inherited portfolio is passed down, those accumulated shares continue to pump out cash, completely altering the economic trajectory of the next generation. It becomes a living monument to a parent or grandparent's quiet sacrifice. The inherited dividend stream acts as a permanent shield against poverty, funding college educations and down payments for young people who never had to throw a punch in the early rounds of that financial fight. The discipline of one person rewrites the history of everyone who follows them. The aftermath of this quiet wealth building ripples outward, fundamentally changing how ordinary workers interact with their communities. When a factory worker or a teacher achieves financial independence through decades of reinvested dividends, they are no longer chained to the desperate survival of the next paycheck. They gain the power to walk away from toxic jobs, to volunteer in their neighborhoods, and to support local businesses with their newfound stability. This unseen army of financially secure citizens forms a resilient backbone for society during economic downturns. Because their income is generated by the steady cash flow of their dividend mountain rather than the whims of an employer, they do not panic when the local factory closes. They stand as quiet proof that the slow, brutal discipline of compounding wealth ultimately delivers the most profound human dignity imaginable. The landscape of investing fundamentally shifted in the bitter aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. While the loud, aggressive traders on Wall Street watched their complex empires crumble to dust, a quiet aftershock was recorded in the ledgers of everyday people. Across ordinary kitchen tables and quiet neighborhoods, millions of standard retirement accounts had absorbed the brutal economic beating and remained standing. When researchers later examined the recovery data, they uncovered a staggering reality that shattered long-held assumptions about money. The portfolios that healed the fastest and ultimately grew the largest were not guided by high-paid experts or secret market formulas. They belonged to the relentless reinvestors, the quiet participants who simply let their automatic dividend plans buy more shares through the darkest days of the crash. The profound truth was undeniable, proving that enduring wealth is forged not by dodging the heavy blows, but by leaning into the storm with an unbreakable system. The long fight always comes down to the quietest moments. Look closely at a simple digital notification lighting up a cracked smartphone screen, confirming the automatic purchase of one tiny fraction of a share. In that brief, silent flash, the relentless engine of compounding turns over once more, and the next unstoppable fortune begins to rise.